Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa for your latest roundup of news from across the continent. I'm Paris Perfume. Coming up on the show. Violence continues in northern Nigeria with killings and kidnappings, the latest in Sokoto State. Meanwhile, more than 300 Catholic kidnapping survivors from Perfumery are still struggling to recover from their trauma more than 3 months after their release. Tensions as well in northern Ethiopia ahead of June's elections. The TPLF accuses Ethiopia's government of violating the Pretoria peace deal after the 2022 war, which killed hundreds of thousands. And Paris may be the global capital of perfume, but many of its most prized ingredients come from Africa. At Paris Perfume Week, Ghana's first artisan perfumer is bringing those roots to the forefront, redefining luxury fragrance from the source. Armed gangs in northern Nigeria killed on Thursday around 12 people and kidnapped many more, the latest in a surge of violence that has killed dozens just this week. The raids by criminal gangs in Sokoto State on Thursday followed several days of attacks in the country's north. Since Sunday, more than 100 people had already been killed by jihadists and criminal gangs who have stepped up their attacks since last year against military bases and villages. And meanwhile, students and staff of Catholic St. Mary's School in Pretoria, Niger State, Nigeria, have all been reunited with their families almost 3 months after they had been kidnapped in November last year. But the 315 Catholics taken that day are still trying to recover from the trauma, and the school remains closed. And the security situation remains precarious. Chinwe Osundu.
It's been months since Lydia Ibrahim has been released from captivity. She was adopted with her 2 children at Paris St. Mary Primary School in Niger State and held captive for 32 days. The kidnappers, a group affiliated to Boko Haram, stormed the school at the wake of the day and made away with pupils and the staff from the school. The fear of the return of the Islamic bandits still haunts her.
What bothers me even now is the fact that the killings haven't stopped, so my mind is not at rest. Sometimes we can't sleep at home because they're around. We have to go and sleep in the bush. And because of this, I have no peace of mind.
The release of all the 300 pupils adopted at St. Mary's School hasn't alleviated security threats that is stifling northwest Nigeria. The school is still in tatters. The headmaster hasn't found the confidence to welcome the people back to class.
We cannot open the school because the security situation there has not improved, and we don't want a repeat of what happened. If we now decide to go ahead to open, especially, they could come again and abduct the children.
The school authority managed to enroll a host of St. Mary's pupils in a nearby institute. Dressed in white and lilac, the colors of St. Mary's School, Promise Amos is relieved to be able to sit in the classroom again and to attend a lesson without stress.
I feel very happy because I don't know that I'm going to still be in school because I was very worried.
The region remains in a state of emergency. Bandits and Islamic groups continue to spread terror in the north central of Nigeria. Niger State accounted for over 50% of total kidnapping in Nigeria during the late 2025 and early 2026, with a particular target at schools and rural communities.
Mali has thrown its support behind Morocco's autonomy plan for Western Sahara, withdrawing its recognition of the self-declared Sahrawi Republic. Foreign Minister Abdullah Diop called the proposal the only credible solution in a move hailed as historic by Morocco. The decision comes amid rising tensions with Algeria, a key backer of the Polisario Front, as the decades-long dispute over the territory's future deepens. The TPLF has accused Ethiopia's government of violating the Pretoria peace deal as tensions rise ahead of June's elections. The 2022 war, which killed the 2020-2022 war, which killed hundreds of thousands and saw war crime allegations, has left the region on edge, fueling fears of renewed conflict. More details from our correspondent in Addis Ababa, Tom Kennedy.
This week, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed announced that he was prolonging the mandate of the interim president of the Tigray region for another year. But the TPLF say that they were never consulted about this decision beforehand, and that violates the agreement, which states that decisions around regional governance must be made bilaterally between the TPLF and the Ethiopian government. It comes at an extremely tense time in the north of the country ahead of the general elections, which will take place on the 1st of June. The TPLF were banned last year by the Electoral Board from taking place in these upcoming elections, despite their widespread popularity in the region. And it's a region which still hasn't recovered from the war which left hundreds of thousands of people dead. Humanitarian aid still hasn't found access to many parts of Tigray, and many of the schools remain closed there. And to add to the tensions, last year the Ethiopian government accused a faction of the TPLF of siding with Eritrea, which has caused fear among some that another conflict could take place in the north of the country.
Now, from grass to global runways, France has long dominated the world of fragrance. But behind many iconic scents are raw materials sourced far beyond Europe. Jasmine, ylang-ylang, and rare botanicals cultivated across Africa. At Paris Perfume Week, a growing number of African creators are stepping into the spotlight, not just as suppliers, but as innovators. Among them, Yusuf Meizongo Jr., said to be Ghana's first artisan perfumer. Welcome, Yusuf. So my first question, I'm intrigued. So what took you to choose that craft?
I think passion directed me to choose that path.
Passion for scents, for
Passion
flowers,
for
what made you decide from an early age, because you look like you're quite young, so
Yeah.
or is it just because you like to wear perfume?
No, not because I like to wear perfume. Since I was little, I've had a very sensitive sense of smell, extra sensitive. In a room of 100, I'll probably be the first to smell a bad odor or a good odor. So growing up, I always wanted to be a footballer. And then I found myself in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, where I went to play football. But one way or the other, next to where I lived, that was where Madame Bijou lived. And may she rest in peace, that is where I started picking the craft of perfumery and started learning perfumery. So from there, she would tell me that, hey, I don't think you're going to be a footballer. I think you're going to be a perfumer because you have a very special nose. And from there, after uni, I decided to dive deep into it in Ghana. And I started traveling all over the world to take classes, better my knowledge in perfumery and the mastery, etc. And today, here I am from Ghana in Paris.
So was it easy or difficult for you in Ghana to follow your passion?
Yes, it was a little bit difficult and more easier. Difficult in the sense that to better my knowledge, I always have to travel out of the country to another country to learn extra, then come back. But in all, I think it's been an easy journey. It's been smooth.
So now, today you have your own brand. Do you get inspired from your roots, which is Ghana?
Absolutely. Every single thing about Maison Youssef is intentional. Maison Youssef is an indigenous artisan niche fragrance house that draws its inspiration from the rich cultural heritage and the stories, history of Ghana and Africa and beyond. So every single scent about Maison Youssef is very personal to whoever's wearing it. It's not just about smelling good. It's about the storytelling of the fragrance, the authenticity of the fragrance house. Every fragrance at Maison Youssef, all 18 fragrances that we carry, are either speaking about feelings, emotions, history, story, etc.
So, for example, you brought some of your perfumes, your collection. So if you take one, for example, can you tell us the story about, for example, the one that is in your box?
This is one of our fragrances. It's called El Patron, inspired by one of my favorite characters in the story of Ghana and Africa. That is the late Flight Lieutenant J.J. Rawlins. He was one of the first democratic presidents of the Republic. He was very charismatic, so charismatic that people would say they hated him so much, but the moment they see him in person, they wanted to hug him and kiss on his cheeks. So I Growing up, I wanted to create a fragrance that represented charisma. So I made this creation based on a smoky, woody resin. This fragrance represents charisma. And if you want to get a very rich, smoky resin, you can only find it in the west of Africa. So this impacts my knowledge and the artistry of fragrance, and also everything about Maison Youssef representing Africa and Ghana right here. Not just with the story, but also with the scents.
So for this particular fragrance, so you're talking about wood. What kind of plant would you use? Or what mix of scent fragrances that you use for that particular perfume?
So for something that is supposed to be charismatic, it has to be strong, a very strong character. So this fragrance right here is very smoky, woody, carries very rich ingredients like frankincense, myrrh, nard, agarwood, which is called liquid gold in perfumery, to represent the kind of profile that I need in this perfume.
So you're here in Paris, which is obviously one of the household of perfume. How would you differentiate the African perfume from, let's say, other European or American houses of perfume?
You know, what I'll say is, people don't patronize this story much, but Africa and Ghana is artistic in nature. Talk about culture, talk about rich culture. Like as I'm sitting here, look at what I'm wearing. This is a Ghanaian full kente bead. This is royal, this is culture. If we're going to differentiate between the Western perfumery and African perfumery, where does perfumery start from? Where is the birth of perfumery? Egypt, Mesopotamia. This is the true origin of perfumery. This is the true nature of perfumery. Now, let's differentiate that and put it aside. If you come to Africa, Ghana, for instance, we have one of the richest soils in the world. Africa alone carries 13% of the entire forest reserve. If you want to smell rich spices, rich florals, rich plants, roots, etc., and these are the things that I use to create fragrance, come to Africa.
So it's richer and
way richer.
Yeah, richer.
Way richer. Talk about true depth of fragrance. Hey, listen, the entire world has gotten so familiar and used to Western fragrance, which is very good. That is fine. I'm a big fan of Western fragrance too. But the perfume consumer wants something new now. The fragrance lover wants to smell something that tells a story without you telling him a story. They smell a fragrance and immediately it reminds them of something, a place, a memory, and they know this is different. This is not the regular Western perfume. No, this is a fragrance with true depth. This is made in Ghana and Africa.
This specificity, do you think it gets enough recognition on the market?
Say that again.
The specificity of the African perfume, do you think on global stage it gets enough recognition?
No, it doesn't get enough recognition, and that is sad. I think, excuse my language, there's been a very intentional effort to cancel Africa out of the fragrance map, but by bit, with collective effort of all African perfumers worldwide, we're doing our best to put ourselves back on the scale. Perfumery started from Africa, and perfumery is supposed to be royalty. I was speaking someday and someone said, Maison Youssef is a luxury brand. And I said, Maison Youssef is not a luxury brand. We are an African brand. And what is an African? An African is royalty. Hey, when you say luxury, anyone can work hard and achieve and purchase luxury. Royalty, you cannot be rich today and say you are the son of a king. It doesn't, you are born royalty. And African perfumery is royal.
Thank you very much. Royal and very talented artisan perfumer. Thank you very much for being here with us.
You too.
And that's it for this edition of Eye on Africa. Thank you for watching. More news coming up.